here's Alex again with the continuation of our 23.10 to 26.1 update, and that's a big update since we jump over the, well, main releases where Oracle changed something architecturally. That was 25.2, there was the Oracle database client now shipped with Siebel, the Merant ODBC driver migration. We have 25.6 behind us, which introduced Java 21 and new Tomcats. And we have jumped over 25.10, which was including the encryption upgrade. So several hurdles taken very elegantly by the Siebel CRM update. Another thing we already did on this environment was running the post-install database setup X manually, because we can, and it just separates the concerns a little bit in this big update, sorry. keep confusing those. And now it's time to talk about the repository update. And yes, you've not misheard. In 26.1 it's called repository update. It was called repository upgrade until 25.12. So I have saved the old SES folder, and for good reason. I save that folder most of the times when I do an update, because I can just go back in time and see how things were or how files looked like. And I can copy paste, of course, if need be. And in the bin folder of your Siebel server, you might be used to the sight of a repository upgrade.zip file. And it is called repository upgrade until 25.12. And if you open that file, which is perfectly fine, you will see what the repository upgrade utility will see when it extracts information. So for each month, with a little bit of gaps in the year 20, but then, the first years, but then monthly releases were shipped by Oracle. And of course, the last one here is 23.10. Because that's a 23.10 Siebel. But in 25.12 you have, of course, 26 more, or something like that. And each of these folders can contain 4 different things. So it's different every month. So this one I just randomly clicked just has repository. But if it's repository, the changes from Oracle are present in a CIF file, which, and that's important, contains the entire definition of each object that Oracle has added or modified. And it's those modified standard objects that we should be afraid of, or many people are, because you can, as you know, you can as a customer, you can also modify a standard object. So when this CIF is applied and it contains a standard object that you also have modified, then Oracle wins. It's overwritten with factory settings. For example, your custom search specification on the Action business component would be erased, overwritten, of course, in a integration workspace or developer workspace underneath a separate integration workspace. So you can always go back and there's a tool in Web Tools, there's a few where you can see those conflicts. But you have to be very aware of this. And the thing is, if you wait too long, like if you've never done a repository upgrade to this date, you have 60 plus almost 6 years worth, that's 70, 6 years worth of repository imports waiting for you. So if you've never done one. Here on this environment, of course, the last one we did was 23.10. So the next one we do is 26.1. So that's also a significant gap already. So let's look into some other folders. So here we have a repository and we have seed data. That's the second part the repository upgrade and update does. Seed data is imported into various tables, including list of values. And we have a schema CIF file. So that is how the schema changes are transported in terms of new tables, new columns, new indexes, or even modified columns in some cases. So schema seed repository, and well, we have to really be lucky to find some manifest files here, but at times there is a manifest SQL file. So there are 4 things that a repository update as per the new terminology does. So let's compare this. So we can just go to the new Siebel SCS folder after the update to 26.1 or later. You will not find a repository upgrade utility and repository upgrade zip. Now the naming convention is repository update. And I like that very much because it's much cleaner. It's never been an upgrade, it's always been an update. And it's not just a repository update, so the perfect naming convention for this file would be repository seed schema manifest update. But that's too long probably. So let's open this side by side. And you will see a striking difference in sizes. So you might guess why, what happened. Like there is 21.6 in the 23.10 release, and now there's 21.6, much smaller. So it's like from 10 megabytes to 1 megabyte. You see a lot of these folders just have shrunk, even in size. So is there less content? Did Oracle miss anything? No, it's just a very important difference between the repository upgrade and repository update. So let's open these folders. This one just has a repository, and you can see now you can see the difference quite clearly right in front of you. So until 25.12, Oracle delivers complete ZIF files, and in 26.1 and higher, for the entire way back, Oracle delivers something called a TDF file. Now, of course, it would be super interesting to see both of these files next to each other. And, well, that's what I'm doing here in Notepad++. I just used the compare plus utility. It's working hard to compare these two files because one is really big and the other one's really small. But the files are side by side already, so you can see both are XML. So the new TDF, the Delta format I would call it, is XML as well, and it looks like a ZIF file at first glance. It has a repository, project, has a business object there, and that business object is account, so it's also the first one in the ZIF file, as you can see. Not sure if that comparison will succeed, but you can see the business object named account is not the complete business object, but it's just basically comments and one business object component in it. Or several business object components. So, and here is the next project already. So while the business object is a complete definition in the repository ZIF, let's cancel that. And go back to normal view. Okay, so we've seen the business object definition is like, oh yeah, I can clearly see like 40 lines here, and in the repository there's the business object definition, and yeah, it's much bigger, and that explains the size difference. There's also a business component. What's the name? CFG product info query bus comp. So in the TDF we should find that as well. There's also a workflow process here, and you can see that the TDF file is only the delta, only the things that Oracle really changed. So with workflows, of course, this is very interesting, as Oracle can change, for example, the location, or people at Oracle drag and drop things around in the workflow designer. That is already a change, even if they don't change the workflow functionally. And if they add business services, etc., the workflow will change in a way that can hardly be merged automatically. So we'll see what happens to workflows, for example. So workflows, everything's in there, and the Delta file is the new format in 26.1 repository update as compared to the big ZIF files with the complete, just as you and I would export a ZIF file. That is history now. That's the last release where this is used is 25.12. So of course we are super interested what's happening in this repository update. So let's check it out. And of course we are using WebTools. It's 26.1. We could use HebelTools still, but WebTools. And this is, by the way, the new WebTools 26.1 because I have started the enterprise after the post-install database update, and it just came up like normal. So I've done a little bit of preparation for the repository update before I updated this environment. And you can see there's a workspace has been delivered for conflict analysis after 26.1 RU. So I've taken on a few objects identified by looking into the zip files. They will be modified by the repository update. And that is the CC frame banner web template. So that's code. Inserted some custom code here. The action business component, I did some changes in that. And also the workflow process, the dynamic pricing procedure, I activated and made some customization. So let's look into, for example, this workflow real quick. So yeah, we see, for example, here is a custom business service and there's a custom decision point. And there are also several other changes which we hope we will find not to be modified or at least pointed out as conflicts in the usual way. So it's the first time a 26.1 type repository update runs on this repository. And to, of course, assist with the update, you must create or must designate or create an integration workspace. I will create one because in this training environment, we're working right off main, which is typically not your development or test endpoint. You have another integration workspace down here. And the repository update will create an integration workspace, but I designate an entire new space to this. So I create an integration workspace dedicated from the latest main, so it conflicts with my changes potentially. I call it RU2601. So that's the repository update 26.1. So this integration workspace will now contain everything as of main version 18, including my customizations on this standard workflow, this standard business component, and the standard web template, which will be touched by the repository update. And we can already go to the SEEP server bin folder and run the repository update exit. So if you have any script like I had, it fails because repository upgrade is no more. But if you run it without any input, you quickly see that it's actually very much like the repository upgrade. It has the exact same arguments. So we can run the repository update with the path to the SEEP server folder. We can do the table owner, the table owner username. We have the ODBC data source. Make sure you use an updated, Merant ODBC data source if you're in Oracle. So I've added my table spaces and the SSE role and the languages. Now, -m is an interesting one. It defaults to Siebel directory, so it's a path where the Siebel update, the repository update utility and the repository upgrade utility before it will write a datamic.inp file, an input file for seed data export that must happen on the development database, because the repository update as well is only executed on the development database, like the previous version, the repository upgrade. And you need to transport those seed data changes to the higher database, because that's no longer handled by the migration application as of 25.10 and higher. So yeah, there's a little bit of a riddle here, but we have this file ready to export the seed data records from the development database and then import it into the higher tester production database. -4 would be a log folder. I'm happy with the default here. Generate schema file only. If you want to do the schema first with the DBA, you do yes and you get a schema file, but defaults to N, so we skip that. And required, that's the parent workspace name, so that's the -9. The others are just for DB2 on ZOS, so I ignore them. And the parent workspace name, that's of course the workspace I just created. So make double sure I don't have a typo in there. And so it should run into this integration workspace. You can only designate an integration workspace here. You cannot use main. That would result in an error. Okay, so yeah, fingers crossed that everything is correct. So first time running the repository update executable on 26.1, and of course in higher Siebel releases. If you watch that video a few months in, it will still be a repository update. And now let's see how it goes. So again, we're coming from 23.10, so it should identify the latest repository upgrade that happened using that column in the workspace version table, if you're aware of that. It found out it has to do 23.11 all the way up to 26.1. So it is now doing the schema first. That's quite understandable. The repository upgrade, for me, looked very similar, so or exactly the same until now. So it's basically compiling the schema information for all these releases, and it will then apply these schema changes. So you will get at this moment, of course, you must have taken a good backup of your development database, because there's kind of a non-reversible change. There is no rollback for schema other than restoring your database. And so in a few moments it will change the database schema in the development database. And imagine what that means for your next migration. There will be an updated schema in your development database, which will be detected. And when you do your next migration, just imagine a hotfix to production tomorrow. That schema will be migrated by the migration application to your higher environment. Does it hurt? Most probably not, because it's new tables like the data archival stuff that is not needed. So new tables, new columns rarely ever hurt. But if it's a really big table with a really big index, then it might just hurt your production database. And so it's a good thing to really pay attention to what happens. Check out the log files, check out these zip files for the content and analyze them thoroughly. Maybe even have your favorite AI write a Python utility to parse the content. Yeah, don't upload it to AI, right? No, not to any cloud-based AI, that is. So do everything you can to understand the process, to understand what's going on. So now it's importing the schema files. And we can see here, it uses, has used seepdev CLI, and it is very busy, the database is busy. And here's the ddl-dict utility and ddl-imp already kicking in, making these schema changes. So we can really see it live happening here. Okay, so schema changes are happening, and if you wonder, the same thing happens during a repository upgrade in the 25.12 or earlier version. And here's the headless tools again, seepdev CLI, already doing the incremental table publish. So that is the thing that you might run yourself in some situations where you have a new table defined in the repository, and now you actually need it in the runtime repository. So yeah, this log file that is written here is very informative, I can tell. Okay, so it seems to have done the schema changes. Let's check out. It now proceeds to the repository import. So it creates an integration branch using seepdev CLI, by the way. So it creates a new integration workspace, and in that integration workspace it will create a development workspace where it then imports the TDF files. It's no longer zip files, right? It's hard to imagine. Those TDF files will be processed by probably seepdev CLI as well. We don't know yet. There's a little bit of data imp you have seen here. Data import seepdev CLI again. It's now creating that developer workspace. Hard to tell, but here create workspace devs admin Siebel 26.1. And of course we're super curious what's the next thing that happens. It now is compiling the list of TDF files that it has to bulk import into this database. And of course it's quite a bunch, 2311 to 26.1, almost all the way, as far as I can see, yeah, all the way through. And now it's importing the repository, and we can see it's seepdev CLI, so it's doing the thing, and it's importing into as a batch import Siebel repository. Oh, there you can see it, merge TDF. I'm fairly sure that TDF was not there before in 25.12 or earlier. So merge TDF, that tells the seepdev CLI you are dealing with the new delta format for the Siebel the repository update. So it is going, yes. We could also look into this integration workspace. Let's refresh that here. And yeah, we can see the import is happening as we speak into this development workspace. That's the active workspace right now, where the TDF file content arrives, of course resulting in inserts and updates on various types of objects. So you can refresh this list. So far we have only 16 inserts, 24 updates. If we keep refreshing that, I think it will. The counter will go up as it goes through the various versions. It's a batch import, so it's probably doing a lot of TDF files in one folder, one after the other, in the correct sequence, of course. That's important because when Oracle changed, for example, something in 24.3 and then changed it again in 25.6, that is the natural progression of changes when you import these TDF files. I wonder, and I'm just wondering really while this is running, if TDF files can be produced by customers. I guess not, but time will tell. I haven't found any documentation about exporting a TDF file from Siebel tools or web tools or any menu items. There's nothing. So for customers, it's still the ZIF file format to transport changes. So Oracle brings you the changes for the repository update in the new TDF format, which is the delta information. Okay, so I'll stop rambling and stop recording for now. We'll come back when anything exciting happens or the next step occurs. All right, so yeah, that went for quite some time with the TDF import. I have to take care not to say CIF import anymore. And we get a success message here, or well, at least the manifest import was the last one completed, and there is the WebTools archive CIF attribute differences message here, still CIF, well, partially true. And if we scroll back up here, we see that the repository import started. We've seen that before, has obviously completed, yeah, the repository import using the new TDF format. And then it proceeded to the seed import, also including LOVs. That's important, of course, for the migration of stuff. And seed import was completed, and then the final was the manifest, which is basically SQL against the manifest, OpenUI manifest table. And it gives us information here, as the previous repository upgrade did, that it has created an integration branch and a workspace where we'll find all the stuff, all the repository stuff, of course. And there is a HTML report, just like before in the repository upgrade days. So let's do one by one. Let's check the report first. So if you go to your log folder, if you haven't restarted your Siebel server, if you did, it's in the log archive. So you have the last one that we did. That was the actually this one, I guess. Yeah. So that was a successful execution. You see the start and end time. So it was significant, though, almost 2 hours. Well, we had more than 2 years, so that's fair. And you see the big green thing, which is always a great thing to see, right? And we have the repository stuff. And here, that's if you have never done a repository update or upgrade before, you will be surprised at the sheer number of objects when you have a gap of a few months or even a few years. There are 390 applets being either inserted or modified. And if one of these applets is an applet that you also modified, like maybe the service request detail applet, because just by chance, or employee list applet, then in the previous versions, the repository upgrade, if you have modified that in any way, all your conflicting modifications, that is in existing child elements like controls or existing properties, if you made any modifications, these will be gone. Now with the TDF, that risk is much, much less of conflicts. But you see that, yeah, it touches almost any application. It touches 300 plus business components. And you feel a little bit intimidated by that report because, oh, how the hell should we find out where are the conflicts? Because these are literally thousands of changes. Not talking about the schema changes, which is great information because these schema changes will be propagated at your next migration. No matter if you deliver that stuff in the repository or not, the schema has been changed. So there is an index, for example, being deactivated. There's a new column in an existing table. There's another new column. So you see SEVT Act, that's a notoriously big table in most projects. If you think that is a problem, you have to investigate here, because in production databases, when you do, for example, a hotfix, you think the hotfix takes just 5 minutes, incremental migration, etc. And all of a sudden, you have run the repository update or upgrade, and you have these schema changes in your dev database. The migration application will force these changes onto the production database in big tables. That new column and index changes could just run for hours. So your hotfix will run for hours and not minutes, and you need to be prepared for that. So that's why we spend some time, and I urge you to spend a lot of time analyzing the outcome here. So for example, 26.1 introduces some changes in Siebel loyalty. You can clearly see that here, the tables. The manifest changes as well. So there are, for example, there are these new web component presentation models in 26.1, which we can see here, which is really nice. And we have the seed data changes, and you want to review those as well, if they have any impact on your customizations or not. So there is, for example, a state model change or new state model. There's a list of values. Also, the repository upgrade will inject list of values for, well, for the stuff that the repository update brings. And pardon me if I constantly refer to the repository upgrade. It's now repository update, of course. So yeah, study that report, study those log files, archive that stuff. And another file you should look for is the datamig.inp. So let's just search for it in the log folder, across the log folder. Windows will find it. And it's typically located in the repository upgrade folder. So right here in that, and anytime you run it, you get a new folder. And that's the file that contains, if you're curious, you can look into it, the row IDs of all the records, all the tables that you have just seen in the report, the seed data import, minus the LOVs. Why not LOVs? Because LOVs are transported in with a different service in the migration application. And as irony has it, the service in the migration application to use this file, to use the command line utility called data.exp, which reads that file and exports these exact records from the development database, has been deprecated. So officially there's no tool, but of course if you have to talk to Oracle, how do I migrate these changes from development database to the runtime database? The answer is you will probably prompt it to run the command line utilities, but only do that if Oracle tells you so. So yeah, this is interesting because why do we need this file? Because the repository update doesn't run against runtime repository databases. The migration application handles repository, LOV, schema, and manifest, but not the seed data tables, the non-workspace managed seed data tables. So this is a separate utility, and these are the exact records that need to be exported from development and imported, of course, subsequently into the runtime repository database. Okay, so salvage this file. If you salvage the entire log folder, you know where to look for the file, or you have maybe put in a separate parameter to place the file in a different folder. So now it's time to take a look at Siebel Web Tools, because Siebel Web Tools is the only place where you will see those conflicts. So you have to find that one developer workspace, which was created by the utility itself. You see that the integration workspace is just in created state, and here's the developer workspace. So take that in, 1024, nice nerdy number of new objects, 8 deactivated objects, and 592 updated objects. Let me just zoom in here a little bit. You can see that 1024, 8, 592. The 592, this is basically the objects that have been modified between 23.11 and 26.1, and these we have to worry about. The new objects from Oracle, you don't have to worry about. They're new. You have never had a chance to even modify them. 592 objects have been modified, and if you have modified one of them or more of them, there is a potential for conflict. But with the new TDF Delta version Delta files that are imported since 26.1, there is a very, very low risk of conflict. And we'll check out, if you remember, we have business component changes and workflow process changes and a web template. And now all you have to do is open this workspace. Don't deliver it yet. You just open it and then go to Archive and go to CIF attribute differences. You have to open the latest version, of course. And this is the view. Why is it labeled still CIF? Because it is also showing attribute differences for each object when you use the CPDEF CLI in the traditional mode in batch importing CIF files. So now CPDEF CLI has worked on this workspace with the new TDF mode, but the view is still called CIF attribute differences that in the menu. That's fine. So here we see all the objects listed by their which have differences on the attribute level between the two versions, the 23.10 version and the 26.1. It's all safe in that developer workspace, so you can still make changes and, of course, inspect that. So it is very prudent to go through this list and identify any applet, business component, etc. that you have modified. Of course, this requires knowledge. What have you done over the past decade, over the past 2 years or so? If you don't have that knowledge, of course, you need to find out the hard way. So, but the new TDF import will greatly reduce the risk of conflicts. So let's see if the business component action pops up here, and it does indeed. So business component user prop, there's a lot of user properties that we have customized. So sorry, we have not customized, they're new. You can tell it's new actually by the name being an attribute difference. There was no name before. That's there. Well, private fields, for example, is changed. And there's also field level changes. So there is no conflict on the side of the business component where we made customizations. We'll check that soon. But that would show up here. That's because Oracle didn't change these things. I will show the changes. And then we had a web template that we modified, the CC frame banner. And here you can see that there's a new imported definition and there's a pre-existing value. And you can make out here in the pop-up, you can make out a custom hook 01, a custom div. And that's my point. This is definitely overwritten by the new code. Oracle sends in new code for this, great web template that's used all over the place. You have made a customization to the code and that cannot be merged. It's just overwritten. You can decide to go with the old one, which is not recommended. It's actually recommendable to accept the imported value from Oracle. It's most likely more up to date and better suited for modern browsers, etc. Fixes a lot of bugs, and then reapply your customizations, or go all the way and copy that pesky object and make it your own, which Oracle will never touch it. If you decide to keep your pre-existing values, which I would strongly advise against, in a case of a web template, you can check the flag here and then click Apply Changes, and it will just use the pre-existing value. So that's one way of reverting from factory settings to your custom settings. But in case of code, web template code, it's really advisable to just reapply your changes or copy the object, make it your own. Let's look at the workflow process. We have the dynamic pricing procedure workflow, which has several steps modified. So lots of modifications happening to that. And there's also process properties. So it's hard to tell if it has overwritten anything here. So you can see that Oracle made numerous changes to this workflow, and the customer did as well. So hard, really hard, as you can see, to see if there's any conflicts. But if it's a workflow that you have touched in Oracle, or if it's a web template, or any type of code or graphical, a task could be the same, then it's very likely that your changes get overwritten. For any other declarative object, like business component, etc., it's not. So we have opened this developer workspace, so we can inspect, or we can actually go to, well, inspect the action BC. And in the property, I've made a comment here. So custom sort spec. So that is the sort specification has been customized. Very dangerous in the previous version. So let's check out our sort spec. And yeah, it's still the custom one, which is just planned, not descending as is the standard one. So it's perfectly preserved. So the new repository update has preserved our custom sort specification, whereas the older repository upgrade 25.12 would have overwritten it, but it would have shown up in the attribute differences view. It does not show up now because it's not overwritten. All right. And there's also a change on the field level. Where I should see the changed fields. And I just added a custom field, but that's perfectly safe. If you follow your naming convention, you know, your acronym, your company acronym, new stuff doesn't get overwritten by Oracle, doesn't get touched, even if it's a child element. And here the account ID, you see there's a comment, it was customized, was made required, and the pre-default value was removed. A change that happens often, which the old repository upgrade would have just reset brutally to factory settings. But in this case, we have the required flag still intact, and we have the pre-default value still empty. So that really proves that TDF is much less prone to conflicts. The new repository update has done a great job here, preserving the customizations while introducing, for example, 2 new fields for the sentiment, generative AI sentiment analysis. So it's perfectly merged. It's like a mini upgrade, but it's now much smoother than ever. Great job here. So now that business component is quite safe to use. What happened to the web template? So let's see. The CC frame banner. And we're looking at the new version that Oracle introduced. And if I open this, it's single line, and any custom, looking for custom string is lost. This is an override. This is a conflict. And it's clearly no way that Oracle could devise a utility that merges your change, identifies the delta and merges your changes. That's not going to happen. So with web templates, you have to be very careful. It would be the good thing would be to accept this new definition and open the old version, see what changes you made and reapply the changes, or alternatively copy it and use your copy from now on. Okay, now to the workflow process. So we have the dynamic pricing procedure. So it would be very interesting how this looks, because it's customer modified and it's Oracle modified. So there is here, that's a custom decision point, which seems to be intact. So we didn't touch anything that Oracle touched in this case. And there's the custom business service, which also seems intact. And on the first step, I made a comment, custom. I customized a standard workflow step input argument, and that is still in place. I added the and ID is not null. It's a dummy change, and I added a comment custom. It's clearly marked as changed here. And that also is preserved. So that workflow is in better shape than I expected. It has the changes from Oracle, and it has the changes from the customer. So that is actually a great result. In the old repository upgrade days, that workflow would be unusable because, for example, that connector that we touched would just point back to the original. The customer moved it and reconnected that connector, and that is now still in place to the custom decision point and whatnot. So any customizations seem to be preserved just nicely. If you have conflicts there, of course, they will show up in the CIF attribute differences. So once you have taken your time and thoroughly analyzed this and made your decision what changes to do next, you would probably want to deliver this Siebel developer, this Oracle created developer workspace, up one step to this integration workspace. And then in this integration workspace, apply your changes to revert back from conflicts. Fix anything that was broken, for example, that web template, etc. And then you can proceed upstream and deliver that into your project workspace for the next project if you work in parallel, or your test workspace or main subsequently. So when you do that first versioning, by the way, you get the message to resolve the conflicts in the CIF attribute differences view and click apply changes. So there's a warning there if you do that, if you version this developer workspace. Okay, and that concludes our demonstration on the Siebel repository update utility, which is brand new in Siebel 26.1 and of course is the go-to facility to update your repository, seed data, manifest, LOVs and schema if you decide to do it in 26.1 and higher. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and bye-bye.